Okay.
If I go to you, take your lawyer hat off and say, babe, boom, 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 let's get married, but I need you to sign this prenup.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we know what the typical reaction is. You don't think we're going to work.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, talk to me, talk to us and say why a prenup may actually strengthen your relationship.
Well, I like to hear that too. And I'm adding to them. I'm asking another question because as a man, I've had conversations with women that I feel like it's a plan B. And I'm not saying that's across the board for everybody. So even as a man, like typically I think you would maybe think that a woman may feel that. But I've had conversations, it's like it just seems like a plan. It seems like you're going into it planning to fail. And that could be a misconception again as well. But that's sometimes my thought. But I'd love to hear the response you have for this too.
Yeah, I mean, so my point of view or how I would approach it is one, it needs to be approached early. So you don't ever want to ambush someone, at the 25th hour. I mean, I don't know if it's a first date conversation, but it's an early
first date. What you mean first date? Hey, what you want to order? And we're going to sign a prenup, right? After no, what you mean first date?
What I mean is
you going to pay half of this meal.
What I mean is intentions. Now, could that rub somebody the wrong way? Yes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Talking about it well before the time comes so that you kind of know what each other wants and look at it as a financial strategy. The same way that we hear all about financial planning, all about financial strategies and, building wealth and things like that is part of your financial strategy to make sure that you're both good, right? Mm-hmm. And set the stage for what you both would like to see at a time where you're not angry, you're not heated, you're not upset, things are not ugly. Right. And so you could talk about it as preserving the relationship. Like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I never want to be your enemy.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's grow. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's grow. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's go. Let's go.
What's going on, everybody? We are here with Black Dad Unfiltered. Thank you so much for those of you who've been watching, those of you who've been listening. I am Carlos V. Spencer.
And it's your boy, Coach Rod, once again, coming together, changing narrative on Black men, Black fathers, and fathers in general through authentic conversation. In particular, I'm excited about today because part of our mission is to educate and create community.
Right.
So teeing that up, Los, let us know what we got on deck.
Man, we have an interesting conversation that I don't think you've seen a lot of people talk about, especially when it's on a podcast with fathers or men with prenuptial agreements. And it's probably one that people kind of steer away from for the misconceptions that may come with it or not wanting to dig into or not wanting to look a certain way. But as we always do, we have great conversation and dialogue that you guys can listen into. And we like to bring in professionals as well that will speak on these topics also. I will say, Coach Rod, as we're bringing our guest in, I have enjoyed having conversations with people who've been watching the podcast, who've been listening into the podcast, and they've enjoyed seeing positive conversations from men, from Black men, from fathers. So, man, I commend you. I commend us on doing this because it's not something that's popular per se, but I think it's something that's necessary. But I will also say we're living in a time where you're seeing a good amount of Black voices and Black fathers talk more. You know what I'm saying? You kind of seeing that stuff.
Yeah, I was just talking with someone yesterday as we get ready to work on a partnership. And I said, I know people are talking like this, and I don't mind being another voice in the bucket. This is one place where I rather saturate the market with positive content, speaking to Black men and Black women and trying to rehabilitate the family. So again, this may be a topic, it's unfiltered. We're going to see what happens.
Man, we don't own the filter, right? Ain't that what we said?
No, don't even know how to spell it.
Well, listen, we got our guests coming in. Why don't you go ahead and give our listeners and our viewers some information on this guest that we have coming in, and we'll bring her to the stage, and we're gonna dive into this conversation. I'm intrigued. I'm ready, and I'm waiting for it myself.
All right. Well, let's talk about this. So with us today, we have Sabine Frankel, actually a good friend of mine, Esquire. She's the founding and managing attorney of the ambitious legacy firm, PC. Sabine is a visionary leader dedicated to guiding individuals and families towards securing their futures. With over a decade of experience, Sabine specializes in creating enduring legacies. As a driving force behind her team, she ensured that clients receive comprehensive support in establishing businesses, safeguarding properties, and planning for their future. She looks familiar. You've also seen her on The Breakfast Club. Again, I'm happy to have with us right now my friend Sabine. What's going on?
Hey.
Hey, Carlos. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to
You know,
be
I
here.
forgot to add too, wife and mother. So again, you know what I mean? So I'm hyped. Right.
I appreciate you taking the time. Yes.
No
This is
problem.
gonna be a good conversation. I'm looking to learn too. So I'm
Good.
selfishly ask some questions for me and find out for some myself and other people that I know. But yeah, we appreciate it.
Let's level set,
Cool,
right?
cool.
Come on.
What is a prenuptial agreement? Let's just get that out the way so
Let's
we
do
all
it.
talking apples to
Let's
apples.
right from jump.
So very simply, prenuptial agreement is a contract, right? It's in the name agreement, but it's a contract that you get into prior to getting married. So you're coming into this with the right mindset that you are trying to, as individuals who are people who have come a long way, I would presume, right? You've created wealth to a certain degree, whatever level that you're at, and you want to have a plan as to what's going to happen in the event that this doesn't work out, if we get a divorce or if one of us passes away. That's what it used to be. It used to be, historically, that if when women didn't have rights, property rights, and all types of rights, it used to be that these prenuptial agreements were there so that if the spouse passed away, that the wife would be able to inherit, right? Or if they did get a divorce, to the extent that existed, the wife would be able to get something. So now we sort of look at it in a sense that we are agreeing contractually between the two of us that in the event this doesn't work out, these are the things that we are going to do. This is what we're going to come in with, what we're going to go out with, etc. And we could get more into it. I just didn't
We sure
want
can, because I could ask a question already. I'm jumping in. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm already learning. It sounded like you said that this was an agreement at first, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, for wives of husbands who would pass away to make sure the wife would get something. 'Cause
Yes.
I've never heard that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, when I say historically, I mean like thousands of years, right? Like before
Gotcha.
laws were really established.
Right.
But even I would say as soon as the 80s, there was laws enacted, particularly in New York, the Married Women's Property Act, so that married women can get inherit property or be able to get property in the event of a divorce.
Got it.
So I'm gonna be a little bit technical here because I deal with money and finance and all that other jazz. But whenever we talk about the law, and now we're saying this is a contract, I'm well aware that there's federal law, and then there's state law, and there's common law, and there's a whole bunch of laws that I hope I don't meet most of them. So just talk to us a little bit more, because my working understanding of prenuptials, it's wealth allocation, right? Distribution of assets is what I should actually say. Protection of what we call individual assets versus married assets. My other understanding is it outlines some of the responsibilities within a marriage. So talk to me a little bit about that and how different states or different territories impacts a prenuptial agreement. And then I got a bunch of questions after that.
You're not jumping in all the. I got a couple questions too, doggone it.
Okay, sure. So the prenuptial agreement will dictate what state's law is going to be over this marriage, right? Because marriage is state specific. Every state treats it differently. Different states treat how the husband and wife will hold the assets, like whether it be community property, meaning we're responsible for each other's debts, and if it's basically everything is seen as ours, or separate property states where they're like, you had yours before you came, I had mine before I came, and then we had stuff that we got together, right, during the marriage. So different states treat those differently, and naturally the laws around that are going to be different. So when it comes to a prenuptial agreement, you're basically saying, you're agreeing to disagree with the state law and saying that we're going to put our own desires and wishes together on paper and decide what we'd like to see happen in the event that we, this thing doesn't work out, we get a divorce. And
Yeah.
so you have the opportunity to change that, to change what.
So,
Yeah.
Los, before you get in, because she said
Okay.
something, and because I went, obviously in my line of my life, I've paid for attorneys. So in essence, no matter what, you're signing some type of prenuptial agreement, whether it's the state's agreement or your own crafted agreement. So that's probably something a lot of people are not aware of. Like, you're going into a contract, whether you like it or not. Do you now dictate the terms of your contract in accordance with what's allowable with the law? Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly. And that's with many things, but specifically when it comes to marriage, I know people have heard that marriage is a contract, because it is, right? There are a set of rules that once you agree, you sign on the dotted line, and the state, it gets filed with the state that you're deciding to get married. You are agreeing to whatever rules it is that the state has with regards to property, with regards to,
Wow.
having to file your taxes, with regards to, a lot of different things that kind of just come into play. And so if you don't want what the state has for you, then of course you're going to need to put something else in place. And we hear that with my field of law, which is estate planning. If you don't want what the state has for you, you put your own thing in place. Well, it's similarly with marriage. If you don't want the standard, then you could do something different.
Los, you had a question.
I did. So I have kind of a two-part one. The first one I want to ask, just to get a little bit of clarity. Are you saying that within the state that you're getting married in, that it can only be bound to that state? Because I hear you say that when you get married, you're going according to the laws of the state you're getting married in. So does that mean the prenuptial agreement can only be withheld in that state, say if the couple happened to move to a different state than the state that they were actually married in?
So states have something that's called full faith and credit. They kind of will accept, a contract agreement from a different state. And there's also something that's called the Uniform Prenuptial Agreement Act, which is sort of like a set of rules that kind of make it streamlined across states of how these agreements are going to be, viewed or handled. So even though the different states have different laws, they had to come up with something to give some sort of predictability so that people know what's actually going to happen when I take this contract into court, what's going to happen. And then naturally people move, right? They move different states. And when spouses break up, they might live in different states, right? And so they have to come up with a way to sort of to navigate those waters. So your prenuptial agreement, whatever state it is, you're going to state what state's law is going to apply, right? So they're going to agree to whatever state's law is going to apply, and then that state's law, it will be what's going to apply.
So, Los, if you can, because before we get too deep into this, because this is muddy waters, right? Because most times when, let's say television presents prenups usually as a man who has money trying to get a woman to sign it so that he can protect his money. Where am I going with this? What made you get into this field of, estate planning, and tell us a little bit behind, like, what drove this?
Oh, that caught me off guard. So how did I get into estate planning?
That's what I do.
I know, right? So to be honest, as an attorney of color, I kind of had a non-traditional way to being, in my own practice. I had the opportunity to work in different areas of law. So like, I worked in family and matrimonial law. I worked with small businesses. I did a ton of real estate transactions. And all those different areas kind of come together in estate planning, because you're dealing with people who have all these different type of assets and all these different dynamics that they are dealing with. And so as I sort of encountered people who had issues such as they would have had inheritances had someone done planning, particularly with real estate. A lot of stories where people are like, well, my mom left me a house, but she left it in her brother's name. And now her brother wants me to buy him out. And obviously the person did not have the funds or means to do that, right? I had someone who had, they were young when they inherited a property, and she was sort of what do you call, like, manipulated into signing over that asset to another family member, didn't know what they were signing a deed, things like that. So it kind of lit a fire in me that, oh, wow, this is something that particularly people of color don't really know,
Yeah.
right? It's like an area, and when you know something, you think people know it, right? And so being in law school and learning, I'm like, oh, people know that this is a thing. No, they don't know. Many people don't know, and we're doing things the wrong way. So I just wanted to shed light and educate on that. And marriage and divorce and all that stuff is a very interesting area of law. I had a lot of exposure to it, and now I'm happy to be on the side where it's like more so amicable, and things could be done in a more diplomatic way. But yeah, it helps people to prevent issues. It helps people to preserve relationships, and it makes it easier on the family as well. So that's how I got involved in all of this.
No, that's dope. I think the thing you said, and Los, I see you itching
Yes,
up.
I got a good one.
I like that because, and we're gonna touch on this later, because again, to prepare for this, I just started doing some homework, and I have a son. I'm not gonna stay long here, and my mindset is, man, listen, I'm gonna leave this kid money. I want to protect this, and so I always thought about what can my son or my daughters, because I have daughters too, what can they do that will protect whatever I'm leaving them.
Okay.
Once they get married, because like that's money they're coming into it with. But I'm gonna put a pin in that because I got a bunch of. We're gonna have some fun
When you put a pin in
content.
it, I
Los,
want to talk about the trust fund with that
Los.
part. When you come back to that, I want to bring that
Los,
part
you can
in.
go right now, man. I see you
No, I
got your
wanna ask
God
that one
powered
yet.
hat with your Black Dad hoodie, sending mixed signals. Go ahead, man.
It's all good.
Go.
It's all power. It's
You want to
all
ask that one
love.
yet?
It's all us, baby. I want to ask this question first. I want you to bring that
Go
one
ahead.
back because I do, Rod, I do have, my children with the trust fund and things I'm looking to build for them to live within the trust and me to leave instructions of how they can actually do what they can do with the funds and to also give instructions to their children as well. But before we jump into that one, I want to ask this one. I want to know if the prenup is airtight. Can I say prenup? We unfiltered. Do I got to give it to intellectual way? I can say it.
Sometimes you don't say pre-nip.
Prenup like a hood way? Is that a hood way of saying it? Is that the wrong way?
No, it's not a hood way at all. It's just
Okay.
a shorthand.
I just want to make sure. I make sure I'm good.
Good.
Is it airtight? Because and it could be my limited education or my limited information in this field. You hear of or see some people who go to court, whether that be a man or a woman who has money. I remember Mary J. Blige. I don't know if she had a prenup, but it was pretty big when she was going through her thing, and her ex, who was her husband, was trying to get some money. Is it airtight to the point where if you get a prenup, can it be broken per se? Can you take your spouse to court, and can you get something that you agreed in the prenup that you did not want? Like, say you want half of the money. We hear that a lot, right? But in the prenuptial agreement, you stated that you would not want to come after half.
Okay.
Can you come up against that contract?
This is a good one.
One thing, and that is a great question. One thing to note is that when it comes to family law and it comes to matrimonial law, the courts have a lot of discretion. Like, even in the statutes, where the laws are written, many of them give the court discretion, meaning they can decide, right? Because it's usually not black and white with families. Unfortunately, that court's discretion sometimes comes with bias, right? And so we have that piece of it where the court can decide something differently than what you had down, but it's not going to be broadly. It's going to be more so within a certain confinement. So what do I mean by that? If you have a prenuptial agreement that says, this reminds me of, I don't know if you guys seen the comedy sketch with Martin, and he's like, say I come in with millions of dollars and you come in with a bag, right? So if you come in with a bag and the prenup says, okay, you're going to leave with the bag that you came in with, and I'm going to keep everything else, the court's not going to like that, because one thing, what they don't want to do is have the spouse that doesn't have, they don't want that person to now depend on the government. Right. So they're like, that was your person. You have to take care of them. Right. That's their number one thing. So they're like, no, you're not going to leave them on the street, especially if they're a parent. You're not going to leave them without care for the kid or whatever the case is. and they want you to have some semblance of their quality of life, right? So they may deviate from that to the extent that they do something reasonable, but it probably is not going to be the half that you wanted, right? They're going to do something. So I think we even heard of Dr. Dre had like a prenuptial agreement, but he still ended up paying the wife like a good chunk of change, right?
Good chunk.
Because they're like, well, you've been married X amount of years, and whatever the case is. And also, we don't know if their prenuptial agreement said if you're married for 20 years, you get this. If you're married for more, maybe they have some sort of graduated scale like that. But we know for sure that the courts are not going to say you get nothing. You know what I mean? Especially if it's been a significant amount of time. And then the other thing is, it's important for the parties to clearly disclose their assets and their, whatever businesses or earning capacity they have at the time. Because if they don't disclose that, then it's like you didn't come in fully informed to enter into this contract, right? You didn't know all that there was or what you were really agreeing to. So that's that. And then I would say finally that the parties need to be represented, or they should be represented. That's going to weigh also against whether the court's going to deviate or how far they're going to deviate. Because if you had a lawyer draft it up and then the other party was just like, okay, they read it and then signed it, then they may not hold that as, as they would if both parties had lawyers and had the opportunity. They definitely need the opportunity to get it reviewed. But if they both had lawyers, then it's a lot stronger.
So I also read in that, I studied contract law.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So torts. So yes. Right.
Yeah.
This is part of the many worlds that I've had. You also, and I'm not answering as an attorney, but one thing that I do know is it also your prenup can become outdated.
Okay.
Right. So there's certain provisions you put in that literally can become outdated. So prenup is an agreement. It's called postnuptials.
Yeah. So there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
you're the expert. I'll let you touch it.
There's a prenup that you sign before marriage, and then there's a postnup that you could sign during the marriage where you're like, okay, actually, we want to put this in place now, and you could do that too.
Yeah, and there's other things I know. This is just from the finance world. Like, I think Mary J. Blige, her husband was her manager. So by law, if he contributed to her wealth after marriage, he's entitled.
Yeah.
Like there's certain financial mechanisms you got to put in place. You can't commingle. If you got a business and you hire your partner to work in the business and they're part of the growth.
Yeah, there's going to be a cost to that.
You know what I'm talking about. So this is why, I mean, like when you say let's build together, let's build our separate houses. We'll just see which one gets a little bit. No, I joke and I kid.
Yeah, I mean, or it's also about like knowing what you're getting into, right? Like you can build together and you could also build separate so that you each are, standing on your own 2 feet as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. So I'm
for it. Let's do it.
So boom, let's talk practicality now, right? Because we got all the other pleasantries out the way, right? The good news is, Sabine, you're a woman, I'm a man.
Okay.
If I go to you, take your lawyer hat off and say, babe, boom, 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 let's get married, but I need you to sign this prenup. Right? And we know what the typical reaction is. You don't think we're going to work.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, talk to me, talk to us and say why a prenup may actually strengthen your relationship.
Well, I like to hear that too. And I'm adding to them, not asking another question, because as a man, I've had conversations with women that I feel like it's a plan B. And I'm not saying that's across the board for everybody. So even as a man, like typically I think you would maybe think that a woman may feel that. But I've had conversations, it's like it just seems like a plan. It seems like you're going into it planning to fail. And that could be a misconception again as well. But that's sometimes my thought. But I'd love to hear the response you have for this too.
Yeah, I mean, so my point of view or how I would approach it is one, it needs to be approached early. So you don't ever want to ambush someone, at the 25th hour. I mean, I don't know if it's a first date conversation, but it's an early
first date. What you mean first date? Hey, what you want to order? And we're going to sign a prenup, right? After no, what you mean first date?
What I mean is
you going to pay half of this meal.
What I mean is intentions. Now, could that rub somebody the wrong way? Yes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
talking about it well before the time comes so that you kind of know what each other wants, and look at it as a financial strategy. The same way that we hear all about financial planning, all about financial strategies, and building wealth and things like that is part of your financial strategy to make sure that you're both good, right?
Mhm.
And to set the stage for what you both would like to see it at a time where you're not angry, you're not heated, you're not upset, things are
That's a
not
good point.
ugly, right?
Mhm.
And so you could talk about it as preserving the relationship. Like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I never want to be your enemy.
Hey, click the like button, click the subscribe, hit some comments or some information or some questions that you might have. Click the notifications bell so you can be notified every time we have some new content that drops. Let's go, let's grow, let's get it.
Right. I always want us to have a good relationship, particularly if we have kids. So the surefire way to do that is talk about our financial strategy now before the time comes.
Well, look at you. Okay.
I still
All
feel like
right.
it's plan B.
Esquire.
This is
That's
me,
fine.
me. I'm just saying, unfiltered, Rod. You know how you said we can be.
Be yourself.
Like it's a plan B. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
I personally don't feel like I would be the person to bring that up. Now, I had dealt with a woman who that was her thought. And I thought it was interesting that is what she would want to do. I was like, all right, I'll entertain the conversation, but I'm not saying I would never do it, right? I'm not saying that either, but it just seems that it feels like it could be that. I understood the things you're saying, and I don't disagree with them that it's a good business decision. I love that space of, hey, if this doesn't work out for some reason, I don't want to be enemies. Let's make sure that we have an agreement that would make this work out.
Because
And
that's the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
It's the breaking up of the family, breaking up of what you thought was going to be, the friendship. There's always a level of friendship, even if you guys are not each other's favorite people, so being able to preserve that helps the healing process and also moving on. So, I mean, presenting it that way, I understand with the fact that, it sounds like it's a plan B, but we never know. Like, you can have the greatest of intentions and you just don't know,
Yeah. Listen, I'm not getting married again without a prenup.
Okay.
My kids don't listen to me now, but God willing, when they're older, if they listen to me, don't get married without a prenup. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Me and Sabine, we met each other in a business setting.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I do when I talk to business owners, and especially when it's partners, especially if it's a business that you plan to scale, right? Like actually lay out your exit strategy, lay out ownership dissolution, go through everything required for if this doesn't go well, what will happen. And the reason why I tell people to do that is if your partner starts going in an uproar, don't go into business with them. Because any rational person that has experience and maturity will understand that this is probably the best thing we can do for each other. Why? It creates communication, right? It creates certainty, creates consistency, and it creates responsibility and accountability, right? So the prenup is the same thing. We know, what do they say? People, marriages fail for what? Money, religion, and government. But truly, the most cited reasons for marriage failures or divorces is communication, financial stress. Right? That's 2 of the 3. So if you go through a prenup and we talk and we outline, okay, how do we want to see the kids are going to be raised? Am I going to stay at home? If I stay at home, what's going to happen? Right? And we can talk about this. Because I love what you said, Sabine. If we can talk about this level-headed, we're not working a plan B. We're actually working a plan A to make sure this can work. And you get what I'm saying? And how do we protect this? And how do we ensure this? And if we can communicate with that, then we're going into this eyes wide open.
Yeah.
Right? The divorce will happen for whatever other reason other than us not talking about what we're afraid to talk about. It sounds like to me when I used to sell insurance, and people didn't want to buy insurance for their babies because they want to, talk death around their children. I said, you know how many wealthy people buy whole life insurance for their kids?
Yeah.
With the thought process of college and not death? Let's not be ignorant. You done got me started. Los,
I'm still on the other side of the fence. I'm still on the other side. I'm still on the other side.
Me and Sabine on this side. You stay there, man.
I'm gonna stay on this side, right? I'm gonna stay on this side. I don't want to.
I get what you're saying.
I don't want to. It's a plan. I don't want to go into my marriage with a plan B.
So
if
what?
I'm going to my marriage, and Sabine, I want to hear it, please. If I'm going to my marriage and I feel like we got a plan B, then maybe we plan that this might not work. And this is from a person who's been divorced from a 20+ year marriage. This is not just a person who's walking into something blindly. I'm a person who went into a divorce with 5 children that we share from the same woman, right? And it wasn't the prettiest thing. So you got to understand where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the side that you would think I would go into this thing desiring one. I just still feel like it's a plan B for myself. I don't want to do it.
Sabine, before you go, I'm gonna just tell you one thing, Los, because we own a business together. If you want to stay in this, you're gonna make sure she signs a prenup.
Wait a minute. So you giving me a prenup option?
No, I'm just telling you straight up, man. Because we own this, which means if you go into this willy-nilly, she owns this. I ain't signed up for that. So I'm just letting you know right now. And Sabine is my attorney. She ain't representing both of us. Go ahead, Sabine, chime in.
Particularly that, when you have assets with other people, like a business, you have a partner, multiple partners, exactly what you said is true. You become the business becomes an asset. And what happens if you have to pay this other person out, or if this other person now, their right is separate, so now they get their own decision-making power. That may not be something that in the beginning that someone would object to, like saying, okay, I have this business, I have a partner. If we break up, this is my business. You don't get part of this or whatever. That may not be something that someone objects to when they're level-headed. But when, it hits the fan, then there's going to be a problem with that. The other thing I was going to say before is, what if one party stays home and takes care of the kids and really doesn't earn anything outside of the home? Don't they want some level of predictability of what their life might look like? You know what I mean? Like, I've witnessed that with a family member. She stayed home for many years, raised kids, 20+ years. And then there was a divorce, and she had to fight for everything that, that she had to get. And it was like, okay, you lived your best life and had your great career, and I took care of home. And that was their plan from the beginning. Like, this is how we're going to do this. And then, we have our plan long term. But then if you decide that that's no longer your plan, then what am I supposed to do? I wasn't the one working, in the real world. So,
that's communication, right?
I think that's a powerful point. Because
that actually happened to my friend. I'm gonna let you talk. That actually happened to my boy, and he was in the political arena. Good friend of mine, good friend. And 3 friends, 3 of us. My one boy had started a company and gave him like 20% ownership through shares, right? And the wife, my friend, the husband, they were all good friends. But in that divorce, she went after the ownership of the company, and she got it. He had to, because the legal process is expensive. He had to give her half of whatever his shares were, and I was just like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Lawson. I'm gonna pop a question to you, and I want to see how you answer this. But I know you want to ask Sabine something.
You gonna have a question to me?
Yeah, we're gonna see. We're gonna put you in the hot seat now, because you done made me mad.
You usually play the advocate, so I'm doing it today. You usually do, but I'm serious. It's what I feel. I was gonna say that Sabine brought up a great point, because I think when you think of prenup as a whole, you usually think of one person that has a whole bunch of money, and that person doesn't want their money to get taken, right? The interesting point I like that you brought up in the educational space, like we're looking to educate our people, is what if you have a person that's at home and they want to have a plan in place for them to actually get something? You don't usually hear that being a part of the conversation. Usually the conversation is, nah, I ain't trying to lose all my money, or I'm not trying to lose half. Not a person who is saying, hey, I'm contributing to the marriage this way. Let's have an agreement that if something does happen, I do get this. Yeah. So I could see that kind of conversation. I still feel like it's a plan B. The best argument I can hear right here, and which I'm honest, is I do like we're level-headed now. Let's make a decision while we're level-headed, because who knows what's going to happen. Yeah. And I'm going to watch this episode again.
Not to mention, oftentimes they end up paying lawyers a good chunk of money just to get to this point. Like, why don't we both save some money? Why don't we both have more money in the pot that we're going to
talk about it? Talk about it.
Pay lawyers to litigate this. It's silly, like, come on.
You're preaching good now. You're preaching real good.
We passed the next plate.
Los, I'm gonna drop this on you, right? Because the goal is to become, you know, because everyone, if people don't know, Los is a serial entrepreneur, right, and a big visionary. And one day he will be, worth $500 million. You have $500 million, Los. You have 5 children, if I'm correct. You leave this money to, let's say, your kids. Each kid gets $100 million. Now they're marrying a man fresh out of college. They're marrying it at 21, fresh out of college. Homeboy ain't do nothing yet in his life. And she's like, Dad, I know what I'm doing at 21. I'm marrying for love. Can't even spell love. I'm marrying for love. You telling me you don't want the $100 million that's left to her to be protected because of Plan B?
Why you gonna bring my kids into this?
I ain't gonna bring, you know what I'm saying? Because I know
Why you
your
gotta bring my
kids.
children? Why you gotta bring my children into this?
Because that's what we and Sabine talking about. We're talking
about
about
me.
the what ifs. You know what I'm saying? But I get you. But like I said, I felt the same way. But now I know the good news is the stigma is not there any longer about prenups.
Right.
People realize that we have to have difficult conversations early in life, early in a relationship, right? What if? Not what if it doesn't work? Because that's not the way I'm going to have to pose the questions. Is okay, I'm expecting property that my mother left to me that I want to leave to my children. I want to protect this, right, and make sure it stays with my children. Are you okay if we sign a prenup and I protect some of these assets? It's not, because remember, what people don't understand is if I make money after we married, if I start new, that's still yours.
Yeah.
You still got to split that. I'm protecting what my mother, father, grandparents left to me and wanted to make sure it stayed in my family. Right?
Well, there's a way to do that with estate planning.
Yeah. I love the plug. Right? But you know what I'm saying? This is why, we're talking, because this is where I'm at in my stage of life. But I also agree with you, Los. It's not romantic, right? But I'm looking at the clock. So Los, I know, because I want to have this conversation some more. We may have to bring you back, Sabine, if you're willing, for some estate planning, talking, and how to do this.
Yeah.
So Los, whenever you're ready, I got some rapid fire questions.
Yeah, I'd like to go to the question that you were asking that I want to add the trust fund piece in, if that's within the rapid questions, or if you want to start with that one.
Nah, let's hear it. Let's give some time to it.
Yeah. So when it comes to garage, you were kind of putting the pin in. You were saying that when you're leaving money per se, like for your children, right, and for them to be able to, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but what I understood you to say is, okay, I want to give some money, or I'm going to leave some things for them with some instructions. For what I understand, a trust fund is you can leave money with set instructions that they can do what you say they can do, and then there's money that can be left to the grandchildren or the grandchildren's children's children. Is that correct in saying that a trust fund would be best? Or is there another way when it comes to estate planning? Do you run into, okay, a trust has been left for this family, makes it easy to decipher the assets? Or have you seen other ways that have been done and worked well for families?
What's going on, y'all? Black Dad Unfiltered. If you've been enjoying what you've been watching, go ahead and click that like button, click that subscribe button so you can get notified, even if you click the notifications button as well, and you can learn more about what we're doing. Thank you for joining us at Black Dad Unfiltered. We're gonna get right back to it.
Yeah, I mean, there are several strategies. A trust is usually going to be a major piece of that strategy in terms of being able to decide what you want to leave to whom, when you want to leave it, and how you want to leave it. So when I was like alluding to a trust being a way where you can protect for your children in the event that they are facing a divorce or a situation of that sort, if they had an inheritance and that inheritance was left in a trust, that trust would then be irrevocable if the parent has passed away. So long as those assets are in that trust and the assets haven't been commingled with the marital assets, those assets can be protected from that divorce, right? For the most part.
So
if the
when Rod tried to trap me, I can leave my daughter $100 million in the trust. So if she get married, that is still hers as long as it's in the trust.
If she takes it out the trust.
Correct. So what I would say to that is that it's a good idea to have both, right? It's a good idea to have both because One, remember I talked about discretion of the court, and the court saying, well, you might be entitled to this money in this trust or what have you. There is wiggle room there. So I would say that you might want to have both to ensure that, one, we had this conversation, you knew what assets, were mine, and this is what we agreed to. It's a good idea to have that prenup there. But yes, the trust also, if it's drafted correctly in this way, it would provide that protection for, inheritances that you left for your children. And it's something greater than they could do for themselves. When a parent leaves a trust for a child, it's like an asset protection trust. So it not only protects against divorce, but it's also going to protect against liabilities and debts and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, he thought he was going to get away with this, Sabine, but like I
No,
said,
I'm just trying to say,
Reel them back in.
you got to bring him back in. All right. So again, I want to continue again, have you back, have more of this conversation because I felt it was fun.
yes,
Rapid
very
fire
much.
questions, right?
Mhm.
Are prenups only for the wealthy?
No.
Elaborate.
So it's for anybody who has assets that they want to basically protect. If you built, you have a retirement account, you have savings, maybe you have property, as you're coming into a marriage, you could, do a prenuptial agreement to say, okay, what I had is what I had, what you had is what you had, and what we build together, then, you could come up with different arrangements for how you're going to deal with those things. And also, not just wealthy people pay alimony, right? Regular people pay alimony. So you can discuss what does that look like for you all if you're both working, at the time, and say, unless it's an unforeseen circumstance that you get injured or whatever the case is, then we're taking alimony off the table or whatever that agreement is. So it's not just for the wealthy.
Okay. You mentioned something about, and this just struck me. You mentioned something about states, and whenever I set up companies, we look at, tax-free states, and I know you look at states where the courts are business friendly, which is why everyone goes to Nevada and then Delaware. When setting up a prenup, do you have to, when you decide which state will govern a prenup, does it have to be the state you actually reside in?
That's a good question. So typically
That's
it
what I
would
do,
be,
Sabine, man.
yeah,
Have you not been
I
watching?
know.
This is what I do.
I would say typically it would be because if you're setting up the prenup, that's where you're going to reside. But because it's a contract, I don't see why you couldn't pick a state where the laws are more favorable,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Carlos alluded to this. Are prenups set in stone? Is it a set it and forget it type of agreement and contract?
Typically it is. You're not necessarily going to want to amend it. I would say that could get a little hairy. But perhaps you can do an amendment, or I would say more often prenuptial agreements are created with the future in mind, obviously. So like I talked about with Dr. Dre's marriage, like if we're married for this amount of years, then we have this set of rules. Or if we're married for longer, then we have this set of rules. And then at some point, maybe we don't even care about the prenup because it's been so long. So it just sort of depends. Most often you'll see that versus an amendment to the prenup.
So again, the last question, if you were counseling a young couple, right? Would you recommend them, take away the profession aside, right? Taking into account what Carlos says, when you introduce this, you're actually introducing, an escape route. Would you recommend couples, men, women, start thinking about the prenup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good conversation to have. Because look, it's not easy to get whatever you get in life. You know what I mean? It's not easy to sort of build wealth, and then especially challenging to have to start over at a later time in life. So I think it's worth having the conversation. Now, am I going to say that everybody needs a prenup? Probably not. But it just depends on where you are, how long you've known each other, how long, there's a whole bunch of different factors that go into it. But I think it's worth a conversation. It's worth exploring and evaluating. Does it make sense for you?
My
I do want to
last, go
ask.
ahead, Los. Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
almost want to ask you, Sabine, if you have one and what do you have in place, but we'll save that for a part 2. But
We'll
I am
save
going to ask you this. I am going to ask you this.
It's not
It's a
me, Sabine.
prenup. So what'd you say?
I didn't ask. I'm not asking anything, Sabine. Okay, just remember that. So
It's
if I have to
before the
create a new Black
nuptials.
Dad show because Carlos is giving away ownership,
No. See how you do me, man. It's all right.
go
I know
ahead.
you love me. It's all good. That's all good.
Yes, sir.
It's a prenuptial, so it's before the nuptials, the actual marriage, and you have some common law marriages. Is this something that if you're not married or not going to be married, that you should even entertain any type of an agreement between two people who may be together for a long time but not married?
Well, that is an interesting one as well. When it comes to common law, because technically, if you're not married, then the same rules don't apply. You actually do leave with whatever you came with. But if you are in a common law, if the state that you live in does recognize you as married, then I don't see why you couldn't have you couldn't have a prenup. You could probably have a postnup because you're not. That's interesting. I'm
We gotta
kind
do
of
some homework. We
got
gotta do
me.
some
I'm
homework.
stuck there, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Now,
Yeah.
like in the
Prenup
movies, we
is
gotta
signed
find case
before
law.
marriage, so it's a
Yeah,
contract. So yeah, perhaps you can have a prenup or a postnup.
we're gonna go to the library and find case law. I've
Yes.
always wanted to say
We
that.
need precedents. We need precedents.
We need precedents. Oh gosh, don't remind me of the stuff I learned. But yeah, Sabine, thanks a lot. I think one of the things I
Thank
just want to
you.
really highlight
Sure.
to our listeners is, and what Carlos didn't really understand either. Don't say understand, but you may not have picked up.
Coming for you today, Carla.
I am.
Thank you, Sabine. I
You know what I'm
appreciate
saying?
you.
You know what I mean?
Thank you.
You know, being all fancy with his mic in the picture. Like, stop this. But no matter what's happening, Los, you're signing a prenup. We already determined that. The government has one in place. The minute you sign a marriage license, you are saying the state of so-and-so is dictating the terms.
Mhm.
And what we're saying is, you're already doing this. Don't get it twisted. Have a say in what's actually being written.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And so more importantly, I think the next thing we got to talk about is what are some of the state mandates? Like, what are some of the things that are universal in the state that you don't even know you're signing up for? Because again, when most people, get married for love, they don't realize the minute you sign this, you actually into a 3-part contract. You, yourself, and the state, and saying the state is your intermediary and you're abiding by the state guidelines. So again, Lowe's, I'll let you go on and say, I think it's a plan B. I'm just telling you, you already signed one. So you had plan B's your whole life. You had your plan B for 20 years.
Listen, it's all good. We're gonna jump into part 2. It's gonna be a good part 2 conversation.
Yeah, no, I agreed. Again, Sabine, this has been my man.
Yes.
So I don't know if you understand. Do you understand football, Sabine?
A little bit. Yeah.
So the easiest way, I played receiver, Carlos was defensive back. By our positions, we were nemesis.
We're not supposed to be friends from the positions that
You know
we
what I
play.
mean?
And
So
we're
this is
really
what
good
you
friends.
see
We're
the whole,
brothers.
you
So
know,
he's the one. Well, he's the one who would sack you. Is that what it is?
he's the one that would try and he's the one that would have tried to stop me from catching the
You see what
ball.
you said?
I am the
Would
one
have?
that would have caught the ball no matter what.
Would have
he
tried. Be semantic.
You know what I
I
mean?
don't agree with it. He's the one
Now,
that did
with that
stop.
being said, Sabine, again, thank you for taking time out your schedule.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We really do.
Los, you usually ask our guests a typical question before we
For
let them
sure.
go.
I do. Sabine, how can people find you? Is there a social media tag they can find you on? Or what's the best way for people to find you, whether it be social media, a website, or the best way to contact you if somebody wants to follow up with you or follow you?
Yeah. So theambitiouslegacyfirm.com. That's my law firm. You can book a consult with me there. I'm also on Instagram as Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer. So you can find me there. And yeah.
All right, Sabine. So we'll definitely share all your social media. We'll tag you on anything we post.
Okay.
Invite you as a collaborator. Again, I'm inviting you back. So hopefully you come back whenever we invite you.
For sure.
Thank you. So Los, take us out.
Appreciate it. Yes, so much. Thank you so much for your time. We never take it lightly. myself and Coach Rod, with our listeners and those people who are viewing, we're always trying to shine a positive light. So in no way, shape, or form, even with this conversation, where we're trying to, design something for somebody to get over on someone, right? We want to educate, we want to help people, we want to help families, we want to help people protect themselves, and just shine a positive light on Black men and particularly Black fathers. Black Dad Unfiltered, thank you for joining, liking, subscribing, and watching and listening. Once again, I'm Carlos V. Spencer.
It's your boy, Coach Rod. Let's go, let's grow, let's get it.
All right, y'all be blessed.
Let's go, let's go, let's grow, let's grow, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's get it, let's go, let's go.